Scott Wiseman said, is it okay that the two American news reporters were shot dead on live TV, yet America still has these gun laws? Now, since we've...
So obviously, you know, again, a crime happens, and before the facts come out, it's automatically our gun laws, right?
been on air this series, 9 people were shot dead in a church in Charleston, 3 more killed in a cinema in Lafayette, and this week a reporter and a cameraman were shot and killed live on air in Virginia.
At least 2 of those places had no gun signs outside the door, making it pretty much either illegal or pretty much to the point where a concealed carrier will not go in there and do business with them. You know? And I don't know about the area where the reporter was shot yet, but I did see the footage. You know, funny thing is the guy stood there with his pistol for a little bit before he even opened fire. You know, now, if you're going to be, I'm not meaning to sound calloused here, but if you're so unaware of your surroundings that a guy can be sitting there right a few feet away, within arm's reach away, pointing a pistol at you for a few minutes before he even pulls the trigger, and you not even notice it, you know, what the hell were you thinking?
And this isn't just a recent occurrence. Between 1966 and 2012, the USA, which has 5% of the world's population, has had 31% of the world's mass public shootings.
And Australia has a much higher violent crime rate than the USA. But since we're focused on mass public shootings, too, France has very strict gun laws. In fact, I think they have even stricter gun laws than you guys do. And they still had the Charlie Hebdo shooting, you know. And hell, these guys didn't even have to, you know, wait until the target was in a gun-free zone or anything like that, or they didn't have to target a gun-free zone because the country is already in practice a gun-free zone.
It's actually happening so often now, we've decided to devote a segment to it.
Yeah, even though mass public killings, you know, are still a pretty rare occurrence, and they only occur in gun-free zones, you know, you're putting a segment to it to give the mass murderer the publicity he wants. I mean, why did you think that person who shot the 2 reporters in Virginia shortly thereafter uploaded that video on social media? You know, why do you think most other of these mass shooters, these mass murderers, why do you think they all publish manifestos and put them out there? You know, they want the attention. And great job for giving them what they want.
And it's called the United States of Ammunition. Now.
And we can call Australia the land of drunken morons.
Clearly this is a serious subject, and we're not here to mock the victims, so that's not going to happen tonight. It is how...
Nah, you're just going to exploit them and pretend like you spake for them. You know, the same tactic that all gun control advocates do after a mass murder.
However appropriate to ridicule anyone in America who can live through all of this and say that there is no need for gun control.
Game on.
It's just, I can't believe that there's anyone in America watches all this and goes, no, we should still have guns. Oh.
Nah, you're right, you know, I guess it kind of is hard for a tool like you to understand why people don't just jump on to the emotional bandwagon here and support these proposals for new gun laws or more firearms restrictions simply because some person like you exploits them and says, look at all the dead children here, you know, turn in your guns, you know, or they're going to be more, you know. So, I mean, I guess, you know, in your country, you have a lot of people that fall for this bullshit, or at least enough of them in your country fall for this emotional blackmail to get your gun laws through there. Sorry, here in my country, there are a lot of us that don't buy into it.
I think it's absolute bollocks for people to keep on saying that. You know, to say that this argument that guns don't kill people, people kill people, is absolute shite. Because
No, you're right. That gun just loads itself up, jumps into that person's hands, and just pulls its own trigger, right? You know, it even aims itself at the people, right? You know, so it's totally bollocks to think that it's a person killing other people. It's totally bollocks to think that you can't kill somebody with a knife, or people don't get killed by knife wielders. You know, it's bollocks to believe that somebody doesn't kill another person with a baseball bat. No, the only way it can happen is because if a gun does it. Because you just know those guns are magical, evil killing machines, right?
to be honest with you, I'd rather take my chances against someone with a spoon than a gun.
And I'd rather take my chances against somebody with a gun, knowing I have my gun, or multiple people with my gun, you know, as opposed to being without my gun and then saying, oh shit, he's got a baseball bat, you know, having to deal with that, or oh shit, there's a whole bunch of them, or oh shit, there's a whole bunch of them with baseball bats, you know, or hammers, you know, or something like that, you know, because you just don't carry around a baseball bat or a hammer on you like you can a pistol. And I certainly wouldn't want to go up against somebody with a gun, or multiple people with guns, when I don't have my pistol myself, because guess what? Your gun laws haven't taken the guns out of all the criminals' hands, now have they? Didn't do that in France, hasn't done, hell, you know, and even in places in New York, or in the U.S., such as like New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, they still haven't taken all the guns out of the criminals' hands there. In fact, those places have some pretty high homicide rates. So, yes, I think I would rather just keep my gun, okay? And a lot of us have that same sentiment.
And also as well...
And I've seen the way you eat.
But as well, this is how bad the gun controls are in America. They won't even budge a little bit. They won't even allow them to...
Dude, regardless of all your straw man arguments, we have had plenty of gun control laws over the years. They haven't worked to stop bad guys from getting guns, you know? And in a lot of places in the U.S., it would shock you probably to understand or to find out that there are a lot of places with stringent gun laws. New York, New Jersey, California, D.C., Illinois, you know. Some of our most violent places in this country have some of the strictest gun control laws out there. Some of our safest places in the country have some pretty lax gun laws. You know? So, again, you know, obviously, you don't seem to understand that we do have gun laws. It's just a lot of us have smarted up and said, okay, you know what, you've tried this, you've tried that, that hasn't worked. Take a different route.
Stop being, like, you can buy guns in supermarkets. So essentially in America, you have to...
The only supermarket I know you can buy a gun at is Walmart's. And guess what, dude? It's a lot harder buying a gun at Walmart's than it is a standard FFL. You know, they have quite a few more rules than a standard FFL. But the idea you're trying to paint it out that we can just simply walk into a supermarket and buy one like we buy groceries is entirely and utterly untrue.
The same access to Cocoa Pops as what you do to a gun.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
That is a complete and utter lie. when you buy a gun from Walmart's or any other place that's in the business of selling firearms, you have to get a background check, unless you're in one of the states that allows CHL holders to get away with not having the background check. But it doesn't matter, you still have to fill out the 4473 form. And to even get a CHL in most states, you have to be more than cleared to buy a gun. Believe me, I have a CHL myself. So just to sit there and say that you can walk into a supermarket and buy a gun like a Cocoa Pop is just a complete and utter lie.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
We're all thinking it. Load the guns with Cocoa Pops.
And the thing is, it's always the same argument from Americans. When you talk about gun control, there's all people who go, no, it's in our Constitution. Our right to bear arms is in the Constitution. You can't change the Constitution.
Okay, I can see you only have people on that agree with you. And as biased as many people in your country and many people with your same viewpoints on guns would call Fox News, at least they'll have the courage to have somebody on with an opposing view. You guys don't seem to have the courage to do that. I mean, it's obvious that you never spoke to anybody who's in the know about American gun laws. Otherwise, your guest wouldn't have made that utterly stupid comment of, well, you can buy guns like lollipops in America. And my third comment, further proof, by the way, that you've never actually talked to somebody in the U.S. about gun laws that opposes you, is the fact is we simply don't say it's in our Constitution and the Constitution can't be changed. We know the Constitution can be changed. It goes through the Article 5 process. However, the fact of the matter is that there's not enough support to change the Constitution and the Second Amendment in that way via Article 5. The people who support taking the guns away, so to put it, your gun control advocates in America know this. That's why they haven't gone for an Article 5 change in the Constitution. They just simply lie about what the Second Amendment says and try to distort the Second Amendment. But I give you props, at least you admit that the Second Amendment is a codified legal right to keep and bear arms, or a codified protection of the legal right to keep and bear arms. So you got that right. And as for an argument in favor of gun rights, apparently you haven't talked to John Lott yet, or me. So it's not simply just the fact that it is the Second Amendment, though I do believe that Congress, as well as the other two branches of our federal government, should abide by the laws set for it.
If only there was some way of amending the Constitution. Like with, I don't know, some kind of amendment.
Hey, you know what? Again, you're going to continue on with this straw man argument, which says a lot about you, actually, more than it does about us. But the fact of the matter is that there's not a single gun rights advocate in the U.S. that doesn't understand that the Constitution that the Constitution can be amended. We know this. We know that they don't have enough support to amend the Second Amendment. Gun control advocates know this. That's why they haven't tried to go through the Article 5 process yet. That's why they resort to lying about what the Constitution says. That's why they resort to lying about what the Second Amendment says and means. But hey, if they went for an Article 5 amendment process to the Constitution, I'd still be opposing them on that, as well as a lot of other gun rights advocates would be. But, again, they're not doing that.
33 amendments that have been made to the US Constitution since its inception, including the abolition of slavery. Even the right to bear arms is an amendment. It's the Second Amendment.
Good. Maybe you can explain that the U.S. Constitution was amended to abolish slavery to a lot of your progressive friends because they still think it's a racist document. Oh, and by the way, again, you know, you're just making up stuff that we've said. You haven't actually listened to what we said, now have you? Which goes to show what a dumbass you are.
Are you seriously saying with a straight face, you can't change a change? Because according to history, you can. The 18th Amendment...
Okay, so this guy's still going to continue on with his little straw man argument, which further proves, again, this guy has no fucking substance. This is why this guy has to only have people on his show that agree with him. This is why this guy can't actually talk to a gun rights advocate in the U.S. He can't actually talk to somebody like John Lott because he's not equipped intellectually to do it. I mean, I guess I need to look in to see what the last leg actually is, what type of show it is, because it doesn't even look like it's really anything other than a bunch of commentators spewing their opinion without fact.
introduced the prohibition of alcohol in 1917 and was repealed by the 21st Amendment in 1933. So, America, you are quite happy to change an amendment if it means you can down a couple of buds with the guys after the game. But when it comes to the highest amount of gun deaths per capita of any country in the Western world, you just have...
Well, since you were cherry picking, how about you explain to me the failure of the gun control in Mexico? Mexico has got stringent gun laws, my man. Why is their country so much more violent than ours? Why is Ciudad Juarez one of the most violent places on earth? And you can't blame that on gun laws, on U.S. gun laws, because guess what? Where do they get the grenades? Where do they get the automatic weapons? You can't just walk into a gun store in the U.S. and just buy a machine gun like that. Nor can you do that with grenades. You know, how do you explain how Russia's homicide rate dwarfs ours? And since we're talking about gun deaths, like they're somehow different than other deaths, let's start by talking about where the bulk of our gun deaths are, and that is in suicide, my man. Since you want to bring up Western countries too, let's bring up Japan. Japan's suicide rate dwarfs ours. In fact, if you were to combine our homicide and suicide rates and set them against Japan's combined homicide and suicide rates, you'd see about the same picture. But yet I don't see a special dedicated to the suicide rates in Japan.
Happy to let that one fly, are you? You're going to let that one go?
I think the thing is, just because it was right, just because you behaved like that then, times change.
Yeah.
People, you know, when I was 13, I'd go out with wet look hair gel and covered in Lynx Africa.
Yeah, this is a bait and switch argument. You see, what you've done is you've taken your changes in small behavior from when you were a teenager to now when you're grown up. Oh, well, pseudo grown up, I guess. Biologically grown up. You certainly haven't matured, it seems. But but you're taking that example of a change and you're sitting there saying, well, that means that human nature has changed over a few generations. Well, no, basic human nature has not changed. Sorry to break it to you, but you're still, in essence, the same species that your forefathers were when you landed there. You see, evolution takes thousands, if not millions of years to do. Whereas you're talking about just basic changes in your human behavior from when you were 13 to when you're 20-something. No, that's just something that everyone goes through. It doesn't warrant changing the laws. You're going to have to provide some more evidence.
I'm not doing that now. No offence, Alex, but I'm not doing that
The joke's on you, because this is actually dupe I'm wearing. So. Piss off.
Fox News this week called a lone gunman on a train from Amsterdam to Paris a wake-up call for America. How is that a wake-up call, but 2 reporters shot dead on live TV isn't? Or the plot that was foiled to conduct a mass shooting at a Pokemon conference this week. A Pokemon conference!
I'll be honest with you, when I heard that there was a plot to attack a Pokemon conference, first of all, I thought it was a load of jihadis who had misunderstood how to get 72 virgins.
And why is it that when a terrorist kills people, he's evil, but when an American does it, he's disgruntled?
You know what? I call a jihadi evil. I call a mass murderer evil. The only people who seem to be hesitant to call mass murderer evil, my man, is people on your side, my country.
You shoot 2 former colleagues live on camera, you're more than disgruntled. Disgruntled is when I go to Starbucks and they write Andy instead of Adam on my latte. Disgruntled is when I'm wearing a pair of swimming trunks and I pull one drawstring too far and I can't get the other one out.
I like how what makes you disgruntled at the swimming pool is a drawstring as opposed to detaching and attaching a leg either side of getting in the ball.
Okay, so we agree on the fact that it takes a lot more than somebody being merely disgruntled to go shoot up a whole bunch of people or to go murder a bunch of people in any other way. Thank you. You know, at least you can agree. So you can understand that most people, no matter how many guns they have or don't have, aren't going to go out and just murder a whole bunch of people simply because they're upset. So I think we can agree that Hillary Clinton's proposals for waiting periods and all the other proposals for waiting periods are utter bollocks, right?
That's not disgruntled.
I'll tell you why I'm disgruntled, because I'm now picturing Adam in a pair of swimming trunks.
Disgruntled is how I feel when you tell me you can't use common sense to change a law that was written 250 years ago simply because 15 guys called Jebediah agreed on it.
You know, again, we're going to argue that we shouldn't change it. And it's not because 15 guys named Jebediah wrote it. And there was also a lot more than 15 people that wrote it, by the way, and agreed on it. But the Constitution was probably the biggest compromise ever. If you actually study U.S. history, I know you didn't, but, you know, that's obvious with your little tone there. But, hey, you know what? My ancestors declared their independence, and they did it with courage. My ancestors made something of themselves. Your ancestors were a bunch of convicts who were sent to a penal colony. That's your history, dude. So I can tell you which history I'd be more proud of.
In fact, our poll tonight is, what other amendments should be made to the American Constitution? Tweet us at The Last Leg, use the hashtag #amend.
Well, my proposal is we don't amend the Constitution based on the words of some jackass on Australian TV who his ancestors were probably some convict.
Gentlemen, any suggestions?
I'd get rid of wet look hair gel.
This isn't wet look.
I would say, how about all citizens have the right to freedom of speech, but if you're outside America, maybe just tone it down a couple of notches.
Yeah. So you hypocritically tell us that we need to tone it down after you just started talking shit about us and talking out your ass about us. Hypocrite much? I'm not going to play the rest of your show. It's obviously pointless. There's really no substance to it at all. It's basically you just talking out your ass. But I am going to give you a few reasons to why I would support not ever changing the Second Amendment. You know, I can't speak for everybody else who's a gun rights advocate, but I'm pretty sure they're going to say some things similar, some things different. But it's not the picture you paint. First off, inheritance. Now, if I lived in Australia, I would never be able to inherit this shotgun from my grandpappy. Let's forget the fact it's semi-automatic for a second, and my grandpappy would have had to confiscate it off of him. But let's look at the fact that your inheritance process is pretty much impossible from what I can tell reading the gun laws. And your assurances to me are just bullshit because I already know, one, you're willing to lie. Two, I doubt you've ever inherited or tried to buy a gun in your life before. So you just don't know. And I don't put it past you to talk out your ass just like you've been doing this entire show. And I know semi-automatic scares the living daylights out of you because you probably don't know what semi-automatic means. Well, that's one purpose. Some people have firearms they've inherited from relatives and they mean a lot to them. Some people, like me, I'm a collector. I'm into antique guns just the same as some people are into antique lamps. You know? I think it's pretty cool. This is a Walther PP police model. Got the lanyard. It was made in 1956. This is a nice little piece right here. I'm also big into shooting. All different types of shooting. I like this here M4. It's NFA Title 1, obviously. I don't have it NFA Title 2, but it's pretty close to the rifle I carried in service. Not exactly. It doesn't have selective fire capabilities. That means it's not an assault rifle, by the way. It also has a 16-inch barrel, which means it's instead of the 14-inch barrel I had on my rifle in service. So it, again, means it's not an SBR. You see, we do have gun laws in this country. But I love shooting that rifle. I love taking it to the range. It's one of the best shooting rifles I have. I've got a few other good tack drivers, but I really do like that one. I already covered personal protection, you know, and pretty much every study that covers the number of DGUs or defensive gun use in the United States, pretty much all show them, with the exception of one or two conducted by gun control advocates, which I won't ever believe, because gun control advocates always put out studies that are agenda driven as opposed to facts driven. Every single time a gun control advocates release their studies, it's been torn apart methodologically. But the rest of the studies that weren't conducted by gun control advocates all show that DGUs outnumber criminal gun users. Now, this doesn't count all the recreational gun users. So, when you really look at it, a more free access to firearms, the benefits outweigh the downfalls. And moreover, the fact of the matter is that, me and the millions of law-abiding gun owners in my country are not harming anybody. And the biggest reason why I like the Second Amendment is because when people like you take 26 dead teachers and first graders to try to bludgeon us with, we can turn around and say, well, Second Amendment, because you guys don't wait till the facts come out. And hell, even after the facts came out, and it showed that Manchin-Tomey bill wasn't going to have stopped Adam Lanza, well, it was still shame on us for not being bludgeoned, or not letting you use those kids to bludgeon us with. Oh, well, I take it back. You did. People like you in my country did try to bludgeon us with those dead children. We just didn't take it. So, the way I see it is you have no fucking right to tell us what we can and can't have. Second Amendment or no Second Amendment. But I like the fact it's still there. So, enjoy continuing to deceive and mislead your audience. That's the one thing you seem to be real good at.